Right, good morning everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Western BCP Planning Committee. As you could possibly tell on the screen, we've got a slightly different venue. We're in the main council chamber, so we're all playing it by ear, and so bear with us if we have slight hiccups, but I hope we won't. I'm sure we won't. So first of all, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer, Jill Holyoake, if there are any apologies for absence.
So please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed live or subsequently broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair and the Secretary. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you. Item 1, apologies. Apologies, we have none today, and we have no substitute members.
Thank you. So I'll ask the members of the committee and officers present to introduce themselves for the benefit of people watching online. My name is Marion Le Pedvin. I'm chair of the Western Planning Committee, councillor for Newtown and Heatherlands Ward. Go next.
Councillor Jo Clements, Penhill Ward and vice chair of this committee.
Are there members of the committee?
Gillian Martin, Boscombe West.
Councillor Simon McCormack, Burton and Grange Ward.
Joe Salmon, Moordown Ward.
Councillor Chapman Law, Alderney and Bourne Valley.
Councillor Peter Sidaway, Broadstone.
Oh.
Peter Cooper, Hamworthy Ward. Sorry for that.
Brian Hitchcock, Hamworthy Ward.
Cameron Adams, Kinson.
Councillor John Challoner, Camford Cliffs.
Thank you. And officers with us, we have, on my right,
Katie Harrington, Development Management Manager.
Adrian Finn, case officer on a West team.
Monica Kwiatkowska, DM Team Leader. Alicia Brown, Planning Officer.
and we've already heard from our Democratic Services Officer, Jill Holyoake. So, are there any declarations of interest about anything on today's agenda? Appears not, but if you think of anything as the meeting proceeds, please mention it at that point. So the next item is item 4, confirmation of minutes from the 15th of January meeting. I'm seeing lots of nods and thumbs up and things. Ah, Councillor Hitchcock. It looks as though we have support for the minutes. Thank you very much. I'll sign them in due course. So after each officer presentation, we'll hear any public speakers who've registered to speak, followed by ward councillors, and then we'll hand it over to the committee. So we move on to item 6, the planning applications, and 6A, which is 54 Elms Avenue, and I'll hand over to the case officer.
Thank you. This is a presentation by myself on behalf of the case officer for this case, Babatunde Aregbasola. This is for 54 Elms Avenue. The proposed application at 54 Elms Avenue is the demolition of the existing property and the erection of a replacement house. The recommendation presented is to grant planning permission, subject to conditions. The site is located towards the south of Elms Avenue and is accessed via the northeast of the site. Further to the northwest is Pierce Avenue. The area is predominantly residential in character, with the exception of Parkston Yacht Club to the northwest. This is a bird's eye view over the site, showing that the site at its south faces over the bay. Here we can also see that the site has a detached garage closer to the site entrance at the north, with the main dwelling being sited towards the south. As can be seen from this 3D view of the site and surroundings, there is a prevailing character of new developments having contemporary design styles. This is noted by the flat roofs and box-shaped forms with large glass curtain walls facing towards the bay. The current site, marked with an arrow here, is of the established design style in the area. That is, either post-war or postmodern developments with design elements characteristic of traditional dwellings, most pronounced with the tiled hip roof forms. The majority of objections raised to this application are on design grounds, that being character, appearance, and neighbouring amenity. The proposed dwelling to be replacing the existing one has been designed to reflect the prevailing contemporary design seen here. These photos are taken from the north of the site, facing towards the south, showing the existing garage structure on the left and the existing dwelling on the right. Seen here are the existing elevations and plans, further evidencing the postmodern or post-war design style, and the existing height and massing on the site, reaching approximately 3 stories in height, or 4 stories including the hipped roof form. The proposed site plan shows the increase in massing compared to the existing garage and main dwelling. The massing of the garage and the house are elongated compared to the existing buildings on site and have contemporary box-like forms with flat roofs. Seen here are the ground and first floor plans, below and above respectively. Seen here are the second and third floor plans, shown below and above respectively. Previous applications on the site for similar but larger schemes had large balcony areas along the southwest and northwest elevations, so up in a sort of L shape around here, which raised concerns of overlooking towards the neighbour to the north at number 62. The current application has addressed this by insetting the balconies away from the northwest elevation and proposing full-height obscure glaze screening along their northwest and southeast sides. The street scene elevation shown here at the top left shows the proposal's relationship to the neighbouring dwellings in design style, height and massing. The proposed scheme has been part of an iterative process between numerous previous applications and revisions, which have further reduced the height and massing to more closely reflect the context of the area, seen here especially with the building's height in relation to its neighbours. The purple dashed line shows the outline of the existing dwelling, and the orange line shows the outline of the current application before its design was revised. Note that the objections received on this application are in regards to the initial scheme submitted as part of this application. The drawings before us are amended drawings, the latest set made in response to issues raised during the case officer's assessment. This mainly relates to the massing of the proposal on the northwest side, closest to number 62, and how this was likely to be overbearing towards number 62. You can note this with the taller parapets on the orange outlines. The scheme has since been revised to inset this massing away from the northwest, addressing this. From these design changes, the scheme is now seen to be in accordance with the provisions of policies 27 and 31 of the Poole Local Plan. Seen here are the northwest and southeast elevations above and below respectively. Note the window and screen glazing on the side elevations are either found to be sufficiently obscure glazed via condition or would not lead to direct and harmful views onto the neighbouring dwellings. The following section drawings are supplementary, showing that a basement is no longer proposed as was in a previously refused scheme. The section also shows a relationship between the proposed dwelling and the topology of the site. All of the consultees, as seen here, support the scheme, subject to conditions. The proposal is considered to be exempt from biodiversity net gain provision under the self-build exemption, and a Section 106 agreement has been signed in the event of this circumstance changing. This case is taken as it is presented currently, and no information before us suggests that a flattered development is being proposed. Chair, I draw your attention to the amendment sheet, wherein the numbering of the conditions has been corrected, and a few conditions have been amended in order to set triggers for their enactment at approval and implementation stages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we move on to the registered speakers, of which there is actually only one, and that's Giles Moyer, on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application on behalf of the applicants. As you've heard, this application is for the erection of a replacement property following the demolition of the existing property. The applicants are, of course, pleased to see the application has been recommended for approval, and they hope you're able to support this recommendation. As detailed in the committee report, consultation responses have been received from your arboriculture officer, the Environment Agency, Lead Local Flood Authority, the Highways team, the Waste and Recycling team, all of whom are supportive of the application. Likewise, the applicant is happy to support the conditions recommended by Natural England, again, who do not raise an objection. Those conditions relating to a demolition and construction method statement and environmental management plan. As detailed in the committee report, the planning history for the site is an important material consideration, which provides a framework for the assessment of this revised application, and this includes a recent appeal decision. The inspector, in considering the recent appeal, was clear in their assessment of the site setting and context, clearly identifying that the site's surrounding character appearance consists of larger buildings of a contemporary design. The inspector commented in the consideration of the appeal, and I quote, that whilst the overall height of the proposed dwelling would be in keeping with the surrounding built form, the number of stories proposed and how they would appear would not. As such, it's clear the inspector had no objection to the overall height of what was then proposed. This revised application, which is before you this morning, has been reduced in both height, from a height which the inspector found to be acceptable, and also the number of stories. The resultant built form, as you've seen from the plans, reflecting the rhythm and respecting the character of the area and aligning with the proportions of neighbouring properties. Your shoreline character area SPD identifies a series of character areas around the coastal edge of Poole. The application site falls within character area 3, which is classed as Parkstone Yacht Club, Pierce Avenue, the Blue Lagoon and Lilliput. The SPD identifies that the character area 3 is a mixed stretch of coast comprising either boating facilities or larger houses set amongst trees. The proposal does not detract from this acknowledged character trait. The trees are retained, and in townscape terms, the proposal reflects the scale and height of adjacent properties. Neither the council in the assessment of the previous application nor the inspector raised any concerns with regard to the relationship of the proposed replacement property and neighbouring properties. The relationship in terms of windows remains unchanged. There are a very limited number of windows on the side elevation, either high level or obscurely glazed. Balconies, as you've heard, have been reduced in size from previous application, and which results in an arrangement that does not impact in terms of loss of privacy to neighbouring properties. Having considered the proposals and the site's planning history, I trust you're able to support the officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. So now we move on to questions from the committee. Anything you've heard or read or seen on your visit to the site that hasn't yet been clarified by what you've heard and seen today? Any questions? Councillor Sidaway.
Thank you, Chair. It was just one. Sound not being perfect. Did you say that all of the objections were for the previous submitted drawings?
I believe many, if not all of them, have been sort of fed back after certain amendments have been made. For instance, especially with the tree ones, wherein which there was like a revised because it wasn't submitted with an initial sort of arboricultural method statement, I believe, and that was sort of revised. So yeah, generally things have been covered after the revision of the drawings have come through.
Just to follow up on that, have we been back to each objector to see if they would withdraw it for the new plans?
Pardon me, sorry? I don't have that information to hand immediately. But I think we can, yeah, we'll take a look for that.
Okay, councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question with regards to the rear of the property, as there's a significant extension in terms of the building line there. How significant is that? I know that we're quite mindful of building lines at the front of the property and as it faces a street, but if you look at that large extension at the rear, what weight should be given to that?
We don't necessarily have like a direct policy in terms of exactly where that rear building line is, but in terms of its relationship with the street scene here is, or not the street scene, sorry, the reverse. It is generally aligned with the ones nearby, so it hasn't been pushed massively forward towards the harbour, as it were. It is generally found in line, especially with the bulkier part towards the taller part with the stories.
So I'm looking for clarification here with regards to, if you look at that garaging, that actually extends significantly past the building line. That's what I'm really trying to establish here, because that is quite significant. I just want to know what weight should be applied to that.
Pardon me, could you repeat that? I'm struggling to hear a bit.
It's not the best acoustic environment. So it's more to do with, if you look at the rear building line, not the main building itself, but the subservient kind of garaging block, which extends for quite a way on the other side of the rear of the property. So how significant is that in terms of planning?
So in terms of design, it's around the back of the buildings. It's not unusual in that street scene context to have variations. The impact upon residential amenity, that's detailed in the officer report. But say the longer extent single story, most of the impact of that would be reduced through boundary treatment, and there's an assessment on impact in terms of daylight sunlight overbearing, and that was found not to be harmful to the residential occupier, and that's in part due to the internal layout of the rooms. No habitable room is going to be adversely impacted. And to be clear, the previous appeal had the inspector considered issues of amenity, and the general scale and massing of the rear was similar in that location, and they found no harm. And I've just come back to the point regarding reconsultation with neighbours. So when those reduced plans were received, no additional neighbour consultation had been sent out. There's no requirement for this to happen. It is based on officer judgment, but given that it is a reduction and the officer is satisfied that all material planning concerns have been addressed, I can't see any concern with that.
Councillor Salmon, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to check. So does this at all change the number of bedrooms in the property and all of that? Is this something where we are increasing the housing stock technically?
It's not a material consideration for us in this committee. There's no policy requiring units to have a net gain of bedrooms, and certainly given our land supply, I mean, it's a replacement dwelling that would have no material weight in terms of our housing land supply position. So we could provide an answer, but that shouldn't be given much weight in the consideration of this application.
So even if there's no tilted balance here or anything like that?
Councillor Sidaway? All right. Any more questions? No, then we move on to debate on whether we should accept this proposal or refuse it. Councillor Salmon.
I can't see any solid material planning grounds to refuse this one. I'd like to propose it for approval. Oh, but subject to all the conditions in the application that are already on there. But yeah, I can't see anything to reject this one on.
I saw two hands. Councillor Hitchcock.
I have no objections to it. I think it'd be very nice.
Councillor Shallonen, were you just going to second or do you want to speak? Right. Any other comments, opinions? No. Officers, anything to follow up? Okay, we'll put it straight to the vote then. Those who wish to approve this application, please vote now. And it's going to be a hand vote.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's unanimous, Chair.
Right, thank you, everybody. So we will move on to the next item. Yes, we'll have a short break while the case officers swap over and set up. But we shall be back very soon. So welcome back for the next item on the agenda of Western BCP Planning Committee, which is item 6B, 5 Chattersley Wood Road, and I'll hand over to the case officer, Alicia Brown.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Before I begin, I'd like to bring your attention to a small administration error. The planning report incorrectly identified.
Sorry, Alicia, the very subject we could be talking about portability, you were quite quick and, you know.
Yes.
The acoustics in here are so awful, you need to be sort of much clearer than normal. So a bit slower, a bit louder, please.
Right. Good morning, members. Before I begin, I'd like to bring your attention to a small administration error. The planning report incorrectly identifies the wrong councillor who called in the application. The application was called in today by Councillor Gavin Wright. The application before you today relates to number 5 Chaslewood Road.
The site is located on Chasley Wood Road, a private gated road accessed from Shore Road. The property sits in front of the Shore Road car park, with Shore Road beach to the south and sandbags to the southwest. For more context, you can see here the application site identified by the red arrow and number 5A, marked by the blue arrow, Chasley Wood Road. Marked by the blue arrow. Chasley Wood Road features a varied and increasingly contemporary character, with a mixture of architectural styles, roof forms and material finishes. Many properties along the street have undergone modernisation or complete redevelopment in recent years. As shown, number 5A sits to the rear of the application site, and while not readily perceived within the street scene, its position illustrates the close relationship between the two dwellings. From Shore Road car park, you can clearly see the rear of the application site, which highlights that the property is visible not only from Chattersley Wood Road, but also from the public wider vantage points. It also helps illustrate how the site relates to the neighbouring properties. This slide shows both the existing and proposed site arrangements for number 5 Chattersley Wood Road. The existing property is a semi-detached chalet-style bungalow that sits in tandem with number 5A. Here are the two properties here, if you can see my pointer. The existing property is a semi-detached chalet-style bungalow that sits in tandem with number 5A. So they're the two properties here. They're currently joined together. Planning history indicates that the two dwellings were originally one building before separate permissions were granted in 1975. And although both have been altered over time, they still remain physically connected by an internal wall. The amended plans have been submitted to reduce the impact of the proposal on number 5A. So the proposal is seeking to create separation here now. The comparison here helps illustrate how the separation would be achieved. Any structural matters, such as how the shared wall would be handled or the sequencing works, would fall under building regulations and the Party Wall Act. They are not matters for consideration through the planning system. A construction management statement has been recommended to manage practical impacts such as noise, dust, vibration and construction-related traffic, particularly in relation to access to number 5A. Although the works would involve a physical separation, the overall nature and scale of the development remain within the scope of a householder planning application. The proposal does not alter the planning use, change the density, or introduce a new dwelling. In terms of visual impact, this change wouldn't be readily seen within the street scene and would mainly affect how the two properties relate to each other. In terms of design, the proposal includes extensions to the front elevation, the replacement of the existing garage with a double garage, alterations and extensions to the roof to create a second floor with a terrace and balconies and updated fenestration and materials across the dwelling. While the increase in height, bulk and the contemporary roof form would make the dwelling more prominent, particularly in relation to number 5 Chelsea Wood Road. Chelsea Wood Road has a varied and increasingly contemporary character. Given this context, the resulting dwelling would sit comfortably within a street scene and would not give rise to material harm to the character appearance of the surrounding area. This slide shows the internal layout and proposed changes to the ground and first floors of the dwelling. Although the proposed garage falls below the parking standards SPD recommended dimensions, the highways officer raises no objection as it would accommodate 2 cars. Whilst the forecourt to the front would be reduced, the proposal also increases outdoor amenity space for a large first floor terrace and second floor balcony. This provides the majority of amenity space. Windows along the rear and side elevations of the first and second floors are proposed to be obscure glazed, and a condition is recommended to secure this to mitigate any overlooking concerns. The second floor windows follow the existing arrangement and are not considered to introduce any additional overlooking beyond what already occurs. On the second floor, a 1.8 metre privacy screen is proposed. Whilst there is a degree of mutual overlooking between existing dwellings and the neighbouring properties, it has been recommended that the screening be extended further along the side elevation to reduce any perceived overlooking that may occur. In terms of neighbouring amenity impact, the proposal would replace the existing pitched roof form with a more solid 3-storey form, which would reduce the outlook from the side-facing windows with the seashores. But as these windows serve non-habitable rooms or as secondary windows, the overall impact would not be harmful to sustain a reason for refusal. For number 3A, although the development would increase bulk and massing, it would not move any closer, and with around 5 metres separation and only a modest rise in height, it would not appear unduly overbearing or cause a harmful loss of outlook. For number 5A, the increased height and more imposing 3-storey form would result in a noticeable change in the relationship between the 2 properties and result in a greater sense of enclosure, provide the opportunity for that to happen rather than being attached. But as the front elevation of number 5A has no primary windows, with most openings facing side or rear, the level of harm has been considered to not be significant to result in adverse harm to amenity, and therefore not sustainably justify a reason for refusal. For number 26 Shore Road and number 3, the increased height and massing would not reduce the existing separation distance, and as such, the proposal would not appear overbearing and would not give rise to a harmful loss of outlook. At present, all neighbouring properties already experience some level shading because the site's orientation and enclosed relationship between the existing properties along Chaddesley Wood Road. With the proposal, there would be some additional shading at different times of the day for each neighbouring property. There would be a little more in the morning for number 3 and number 5A, with some limited early morning shading for number 26 Shore Road and number 3, and increased midday to afternoon shading at She Shores and number 7. However, in all cases, the extent of any additional shading would remain limited, largely affecting secondary or non-habitable windows, and would not result in a materially harmful impact in terms of daylight and sunlight. Overall, the scheme is considered to be acceptable. The limited harm identified does not outweigh the broader benefits of the proposal, and it is unlikely that such concerns will be sustained at appeal. On balance, the development is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Harrington. Now we have some registered speakers. First of all, we have two speakers in objection, Leslie Jeffries and a written statement from Sarah Lynch on behalf of herself and Darius Burrows. So first of all, Leslie Jeffries. Don't rush. We can wait as long as we need to.
Good morning, councillors. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, Mrs Leslie Jeffries, and Mr Robert Jeffries, who reside at 5A Chaddersley Wood Road, to urge you to refuse application number P25-03299 The proposed design will overshadow and dominate number 5A and constitute overdevelopment of the site and number 5A's right to light, as the garden and living area will be immersed in shadow if the proposed application goes ahead. Incorporating the current size and design, 5A will be overlooked, losing privacy in the garden. The build will also aggravate the problem of additional traffic, the road already disrupted and congested from the vans and lorries from current construction. Residents are unable to park outside their own home and is making it difficult for a car to safely exit 5A's driveway. Number 5 and 5A share the driveway immediately alongside number 5, which is the only entrance to number 5A. 24-hour disabled access is required, so no scaffolding or building materials or skips can be placed on the drive, as this would block access to 5A, meaning building materials and skips would have to be placed on the highway, making it hazardous for pedestrians. In addition, the application to separate 5 and 5A would cause major noise and disruption to 5A, the two houses being linked by 5A's bathroom and toilet. At no time has 5A been consulted about this major reconstruction. The overbearing box-like house intended to replace the existing chalet bungalow is another chance for an overzealous developer to make money with absolutely no inconvenience to himself or consideration to 5A. Thank you, councillors, for taking the time to listen to me.
And thank you very much for a very clear presentation. And now we have a written statement that will be read by the Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Chair. This is from Sarah Lynch and Darius Burrows of 26 Shore Road. We are unable to attend due to work commitments. Our lack of attendance does not in any way reflect the level of our concern regarding the development at 5 Chaddersley Wood Road. We strongly oppose this application. We refer you to our letter dated the 30th of September 2025 and our further comments submitted on the 6th of January 2026, in brackets, the submissions. We will not repeat the contents of the submissions here and will take them as read. This development has a materially detrimental impact on our property, as stated in the submissions. The application makes no steps to address any of our concerns. As such, we are registering our objection at this meeting.
Thank you. Did the letter give the address that they're referring to?
I believe they are referring to representations which are on the planning portal website.
Sorry, can you put the mic on?
I I believe they're referring to the submissions that they've made on the planning portal website. That would be my understanding.
They talk about the effect on their house, which is their house?
26 Shore Road. I beg
26
your
Shore
pardon.
Road, thank you for the
Sorry, Chair.
clarification. And now we have, on behalf of the applicant, Darryl Howells.
Good morning, members. My firm, Darryl Howells Planning Consultancy, is here to speak on behalf of the applicant in respect of his application to physically separate from number 5A Chalassy Wood Road, erect extensions and remodel the exterior to create a 3-storey detached dwelling. I am pleased to see, after a rigorous assessment by your officer, that the application has received the recommendation to approve subject to conditions. Typical housing in this area consists of contemporary 3 stories, mainly offering balconies at first and second floor levels. My client's site and that of number 5A are at odds in the street, as being a type of form of chalet bungalow style, older, noticeably lower, and offering little to the street scene in visual terms. The architect, who is well respected in Poole, has designed a scheme to turn the applicant's aging home into a contemporary building of render, wood effect and aluminium cladding, materials durable and appropriate close to the waterside setting. The design has a second floor accommodation recessed and therefore is smaller than the floors directly below it. This design is consistent with many houses in Chalassy Wood Road. The height of the extended building shall accord with the neighbouring properties, as number 3 is measuring at 9.7 metres, number 3A is 10 metres, number 7 is 9 metres, and the proposal again would be 9. At present, number 5 and 5A constitute a pair of semi-detached houses linked by a single-storey extension. The applicant, at his own request, will agree with the owner of number 5A their preference of material and finishing, and shall make good the side elevation of the neighbour's home. The resultant dwelling shall not harm the amenities of neighbouring occupiers. To the side facing number 3 and the driveway serving 5A, the existing ground floor windows are reused. Then, at first floor, there is a narrow slit window which shall be obscure glazed. The proposed second floor balcony shall offer views to the side of number 3, however no harmful overlooking shall occur. On the side elevation facing number 6, known as Seashores, there shall be 2 narrow slit windows on the ground floor. However, these shall be screened by existing boundary treatments. Above these windows, there shall be no additional windows at all. On the rear elevation to the proposed house, facing number 5A, all the windows above the ground floor shall be obscure glazed to protect privacy. The proposed massing of the building will not cause an overbearing effect to the occupiers of number 5A, as the orientation of the proposal at number 5 is actually at the other end of the neighbour's amenity space, which is shown to be positioned to the side of the dwelling adjacent to the public car park. This proposal will not affect their garden or the privacy or the enjoyment thereof. There has been much discussion regarding the accessibility arrangements for the proposal and in respect of the driveway to number 5A. My client confirms he is fully aware of the requirement to maintain the access to the neighbouring property and will do so throughout the construction phase. I draw your attention to condition number 6, where it is proposed a construction methodology statement is imposed and shall be adhered to during the construction phase. The proposed development accords with your council's car parking SPD that requires 2 car parking spaces to serve the dwelling. Overall, the proposal fully complies with the character and appearance of housing in Chalassy Wood Road and, in my professional opinion, exceeds the design threshold of good design as required by policy PP27. There is no evidence of material harm, and I would ask members to support your officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Howes. We have no ward councillors registered to speak, but one of the reasons is that one of the ward councillors is a member of this committee and will now no doubt speak as he sees fit. That's Councillor John Challoner. So, officers, anything to come back on what you've heard so far?
No, Chair.
Thank you. So, we open up to questions, and I'm going to set the ball rolling. I'm very concerned about the methodology of separating 5 and 5A, because the wall to 5A's bathroom, as we now know it is also an internal wall to 5. And therefore, if it's going to be made an external wall, it can't just be left as it is. It will need some sort of remedial action. And this is possibly not a planning committee matter, but I would want to know who would be responsible. We have no application for 5A, but this is a fundamental change to 5A. So who would be responsible for taking remedial action on what is now a party wall? So officers, can you help me on that one?
Thank you, Chair. As you say, we sympathise and see the absolute logic in seeking to understand how those internal walls were resolved. It's not a planning matter to determine precisely what those walls are made of and how that is particularly treated. We can deal with things like external facing materials, but it's not within the gift of the planning system to allow us to specify or have control over the internals. That rests entirely with the builder control system, and the nature and responsibilities of making good of any such work stress to the Party Wall Acts and powers beyond the planning system.
So we can't specify that it's anything about it, basically, no conditions.
We could have a condition requiring, again, this is why I draw caution, because we only have very limited controls through the planning system, and the temptation would be to go beyond that. We could specify materials during for the separation, but we can't go so far to have in place who is going to be responsible and any mechanisms for making good, etc. We just do not have the powers within the planning system to enforce that, and that's a danger. We don't want to set expectation that we do have powers and we do not.
So theoretically, hypothetically, the relevant part of 5 could be demolished to leave what is now an internal wall, which might be tiled, painted, wallpapered, who knows what, left as the external wall of 5A, and they would have to take action and incur an awful lot of cost, no doubt, to make it a proper external wall, cavity wall and whatnot. Am I right in that, or have I got something wrong?
To be clear, just because there aren't any powers under the planning system doesn't mean there aren't other controls in place. So under the Party Wall Act and I'm sure under like legal provisions beyond my knowledge, as a planning officer, it's not really my expertise to advise in that area, but there would be other provisions that would be could be looked at. Certainly if you were to demolish someone's staff or someone's house, I'm sure the courts wouldn't look too favourably on that if you didn't have adequate consents, etc. But that all falls outside the planning system.
Thank you. And while I'm about it, I've got another question as well. I know you've been researching, and I don't know whether you can come up with the answer. What is the current ridge height of 5?
It is 7.8 metres, and the proposed is 9 metres. Is that correct? Yes. Yeah.
So the proposal is to raise the height of the roof, and at the moment it's only a ridge anyway, from 7.8 metres to 9 metres. Thank you. Right, over to other people for questions. Councillor Hitchcock.
Is there a party wall agreement in place? Because if there was, then that wall would be rectified by the party wall agreement.
Yeah, so again, it's not something that we can consider from the planning system, so it's not something that we would have to seek to understand. It's provision entirely separate.
Can we find out whether there is one? Because we could say there's a man with his hand at the back. Yes or no?
Right, Mr Howes, if you can answer this, please come up to the mic and let us know. Can you come to the microphone? Because the acoustics are so dire. Councillor Hitchcock, can you put your mic off?
Sorry, I was going to say, through the chair, at the moment, there is not a party wall agreement in place, but clearly to implement the consent, if you were to grant planning consent, there would need to be one put in place before the works commence. So yes, we would protect, obviously, the neighbouring party but to the side.
Thank you. So could we, if we were minded to grant consent, add a condition that agreement on party wall must be in place before any work begins, or words to that effect?
So again, Chair, whilst I understand why you would want to secure that, it's not feasible for us to enforce it through the planning system. Party wall Act is an entirely separate set of legislation. There are consequences for undertaking works without obtaining necessary permissions and agreements, etc. And the reliance needs to be had on that rather than through the planning system.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor Hitchcock.
but we could refuse the extension should there not be one in place. And if we do insist there one is in place, then the guy that wants to build the extension on number 5, he pays for it because there is a cost attached to having a party wall agreement, as you know.
Well said.
Again, it's given that the party wall Act is a provision outside the planning and there is not a policy requirement in planning for party wall agreement, I would advise against refusing on that basis, as it be unsustainable to defend appeal. I understand where members are coming from, but I have to stress that there are provisions outside the planning system to address these.
Councillor Salmon, you had your hand up before.
I think it's the same as before. I just want to check, although this is a much bigger building, it is not contributing to solving the housing crisis. There are no extra bedrooms, anything like that, or if there are extra bedrooms, not in a way that counts towards our missing target. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Councillor Martin. And then Councillor Adams.
Just going to say on the party wall agreement, I believe that he would be somebody working on 5. He would be required to get a party wall agreement anyway. So that's a given because it's within 1 metre it's inherently within millimetres of the other property. So I think if you're working within a metre of another property, you have to get a party wall agreement anyway. So it's a given that would be happening.
That wasn't actually a question, but never mind. Councillor Adams.
I have a couple of questions, but I'll keep them quick. Firstly, just to help my next question, is there a difference between a construction management plan and a construction method statement? And why would you have one and not the other? Just for my own understanding, because it says on point 6 that there has to be a construction method statement, and I've come across construction management plan before, and I don't know what the difference is.
Yes, essentially they achieve the same thing.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure they were synonymous before I carried on. Second question, the red sort of tarmac thing, is that the driveway to number 5A on the picture?
Yes, the red driveway bit shows the access that leads to number 5, and where those black gates are, that's where it ends, and that's where number 5A begins.
It is a question, but also slightly a concern, so I'll try not to stray into the debate territory. In terms of having a construction method statement, it's surely going to be, and I'm obviously not a builder, otherwise I'd have a lot more money. But if you're building up, up at the side, you're obviously going to have scaffolding and stuff. That looks incredibly narrow to me. Is there scope to expand the wording in a condition to protect access to that at all times at a certain width, so a car can actually get, because it's all right, it's saying access is able to come through, but if you've got scaffolding either side and they drive a Nissan Duke, you're going to be screwed.
Chair, if I draw your attention to condition 6 and point I, it says it includes measures to control access along the shared driveway between number 5 and 5A.
Yeah, I do get that, but would there be scope to add something along the lines of measures to maintain 24/7 access to number 5 if required, or something? Because I just worry that I know they said there's required access for disabilities. They could well be trapped in their house for periods of hours.
We could include some wording to make it explicit that measures to control access, including accessibility to reasonable accessibility to the property.
Could you change control to maintain? Would that be enough?
Yep, maintain, I think that'd be fine.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify which point in that condition you're referring to?
Point I. Point 6I. 6.
Thank you very much.
We are unfortunately straying on to debate. Is this a question, Councillor Challoner? Well, while we're on the subject, you might as well do it now.
Chair, thank you. And it was just to say, should we get to that point where it says measures to control access, I think it should be to control and maintain vehicular access. Because actually just having a narrow pathway is not going to be suitable for these people.
That's true. So maintain vehicular access. Yeah. Which hopefully would mean no scaffolding, no piles of bricks and things blocking, because it's pretty narrow. I imagine you haven't got much clearance to take a vehicle down there. Very little. So there's no room really for anything. I think we've possibly exhausted the questions. Oh, Councillor Sidaway, because we're definitely getting on to debate now.
Yeah, on that one, I would say, why can't you be more explicit and say no scaffolding on the drive? And that wasn't my question. I'm shocked to find that there is no requirement for them to talk to the residents of 5A when they're taking down their party wall. I don't know about the party wall agreement, but is there not a requirement for developers to do that?
Again, it's not my area of expertise, but in the Party Wall Act, yes, there has to be correspondence. But again, that's outside of the planning system. It's an entirely separate act and its own provisions.
Okay, thank you. But there hasn't been any. So is that something you think is part of the party wall agreement, which is outside of the planning? It's going to happen later?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so what happens when the residents of 5A say no?
That's a matter that's outside of the planning system. So we need to determine the application that's before us. We're not here to consider whether or not the landowners, etc., will allow the development to go ahead.
All right, thank you.
So just for clarification, if the owners of 5A or their legal team or whoever refused, that will negate any planning consent on 5?
Potentially.
Or for that particular issue, that particular element. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My second question was around light. I know we talk regularly about the no right to light and all those things, but there is quite a difference between the statement within the report that talks about sort of just a bit of loss of light in the morning and the statement from the residents that says it's going to be a fairly complete loss of light. So I just wonder if we could just join those two a little bit closer.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, so it is just so can you see my mouse? Yeah, so it's there. Okay, so in terms of the actual shading, when it shades, it would in the mornings come slightly this way, and then it will mostly be over their roof form. So they would still retain quite a lot of sunlight, daylight to this full frontage. And they've also got their garden to the rear here, which wouldn't be impacted. So majority of the light that would be lost would be over the roof form. And as you can see by the dormer, that looks over number 3A. So the actual building won't impact the light to that window, possibly maybe to this roof light, but again, it's also a secondary window. And then over this way, but this area is already impacted by this building here. So a lot of the impact is caused by the other buildings as well. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, or shall we get back to debate? I don't see anyone wanting to. Councillor Martin, is this a question or debate? Yeah, carry on.
I'm just thinking about the footprint of the 5 as a semi-detached property and the footprint as a detached. Will it be actually taking land from 5A? You know, like the actual footprint of the building. Will it be within where they are at the moment?
So if you see, so where this wall is here, that's where number 5A begins, and that is also where the red line ends. So all the scope of the work will be inside the red line, so they're taking their own wall and pushing it further towards the front.
Won't be an issue that they're actually taking land from 5A, because that would be another issue. I know it might not be a planning issue, but obviously it's pointless to give somebody planning permission if they're building in somebody else's land. You know what I mean? It's because it's not going to happen. That's all. Yeah.
No, they're reducing the building, not extending it out. So, yeah. And as you say, regardless, it is of land ownership or outside the planning system, and whether or not it involves purchasing additional land, etc. But yes, the building will be making it shorter, so not stepping into the adjoining land ownership.
So, members, I think we're ready to go back to debate on this issue. Councillor Salmon.
So, I think all of us are probably in agreement that you shouldn't be able to do something like this without your neighbours buying and all of that. It's also clear that that's not a planning matter, and there may be mechanisms outside of the planning system to address that. That said, there is a policy conflict with PP27, and I can see actually grounds to refuse on the basis of PP27. I get that it's subjective and that the officer decision was that it's counterbalanced by the overall benefits and so forth. But I think looking at the plans, now I can understand why there are so many objections. I do think there's a conflict with the character and so forth. I would actually be minded to support refusal on PP27. So I'd be quite happy to propose that.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner. I was going to say, I'm not going to look for a second at this stage. I'll bear in mind that we've got a motion to allow time for debate. Do you want to debate, Councillor Challoner?
Chair, thank you. I thank Councillor Salmon for his comments here, because whilst we have an application that undoubtedly matches the architectural and design of some surrounding properties, they do not have subservient properties directly behind them that are going to be severely impacted. I mean, it says here on point 28, you know, the harm and character and appearance of the wider surrounding area. Well, actually, it really is quite harmful to the immediately surrounding properties. Point 31, removal of sunlight will be overbearing and oppressive. That's but then it goes to say, but it's not that bad. But it does have impact on some properties. You know, that is contrary to PP 27. You know, we're looking at something that's going to be increased in a metre over 3 foot, but not just that ridge height, but the overall mass and the width of that property. Point 33, where it's mentioned seashores and 7 Chadsley Wood Road, that it will be imposing and visually solid three-storey facade that will noticeably reduce outlook from some of their inward side-facing windows. But actually, what about number 5A? Think about how visually imposing it's going to be there. It's going to be really overbearing. And then, we only have to go on to light. I mean, they will lose some light. They're surrounded by large properties already. At what point do we say enough is enough in terms of people losing light? We have to draw a line. And actually, I think that increase in scale and mass will be detrimental to the lives of the people in number 5A. And we really shouldn't be supporting any application that negatively impacts the lives of people in such close proximity. The overall effect of this property on the area, to me, is I think it's enough to warrant refusal. When we get to it, I would have proposed refusal, but I'll second that motion in terms of actually, throwing this out. The neighbouring property has two effectively tandem style houses, where you then have them sharing that space front to back. So actually their relationship works. They're not negatively impacting each other or the surrounding properties, whereas 5A is going to be completely subservient to number 5 and will be absolutely dominated by it. I just think this is absolutely something we should say no to.
Thank you. Any more comments? Right, so we've had a motion. I think by implication, Councillor Challoner has seconded it. But if we're not open to more debate, Councillor Adams.
Just a quick ask, because obviously I know you have to check that there's a few points that you made in there that I'd be incredibly supportive of, but obviously Councillor Salmon hasn't added in his proposal. I just wanted to check reasoning before I decided whether to support anything. Sorry if I...
We'll come on to reasoning, when we get towards the vote. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult one, this, because the property itself, number 5, will be substantially improved, and it's the quality of the housing stock overall in the area. I mean, and I love the wonderful balconies. When I visited the whole site, I did sort of think it's very cheek to jowl anyway. That whole area is very cluttered in property, and from the point of view of somebody living at number 5, it would substantially improve their living, because they'd have a balcony higher up, which they haven't got at the moment. So I would be in favour of granting planning permission for that reason alone. So it's quite a difficult one, but I'm not wanting to propose it that at the moment.
I've got Councillor Challoner and then Councillor Salmon at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Just because we're still in debate, and I absolutely support what Councillor Martin is saying in terms of improving the live and amenity within the people at number 5, but they should not be able to do that to the absolute detriment to the people at 5A. Had they done something where it was a win-win, or maybe a win no loss, you could go with it. But this is a win purely for profit. They're not adding a housing unit, and it's not even something they live in. But so this is purely a win, absolute loss. And I think the loss outweighs the win, and therefore that's grounds for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon.
Sorry, I was going to say, if it helps, it's in the report, you've got point 31, which does say policy PP 27. So I guess it's subsection C and D. So that would be the specific bit. So seeks to ensure that development is compatible with surrounding uses and would not result in harmful amenity for local residents and future occupiers, considering levels of sunlight and daylight, privacy, noise, vibration, emissions, artificial light intrusion, and whether the development is overbearing or oppressive. So I think that is solid grounds for refusal. That is a subjective judgment call, and I think that is a defensible reason for refusal that I would be confident in that going to appeal or whatever.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
I think if this had come to us as the whole site, 5 and 5A, is being redeveloped, it's quite obviously the last of that row that hasn't been redeveloped. And I think if it had been both properties that have been redeveloped, I don't think we'd be talking in this way. But yeah, I agree. I think it's on its own. I think 5 on its own is overbearing to 5A.
And not only to 5A, I mean, mainly to 5A, but I think it's going to have an effect on other properties in the area. Any more comments? Officers, anything you want to come back on? Particularly reasons for refusal to...
Yeah, so I think procedurally, before we move to motion, we need to have there's a number of issues being raised. I just need clarity on what's been motioned in terms of reasons for refusal and flesh out the reasons, material planning reasons and the policy. So we start with the impact on the character one. So that's PP 27. From the discussion, actually, if you could... Sorry. I'll start that again. So, what did I just say? Yes, so just for clarity, we need to be clear about, because the debate included a range of things. We need to understand what reasons for refusal members are seeking, what will form the motion, what those material planning reasons are, and the policies being relied on. So if we start with the character, so I've been taking some notes, but have you done proposing?
Sorry?
If we can clarify on which point. So I've got imposing, visually imposing, tandem style housing, and overbearing. And looking at, and that seems to relate to policy PP 27, particularly points I, layout siting, 2, height scale, and 3, Bolton massing. Is that?
That's part of it, but there's also C and D.
Yeah.
Harmful to amenity for local residents.
So we would normally have that as a separate reason
Yeah.
for refusal. So
Right,
we just,
fine, but it needs including.
Yeah.
And particularly the considering levels of sunlight and daylight, possibly privacy, and the other things, but particularly sunlight and daylight.
Can members clarify to what properties that relates?
Well, 5A, definitely. 3, 7, 26 Shore Road. Hang on, Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just jump in, when you mentioned the architectural style, I did mention that this kind of sits within the overall feel, but the impact here is because it's got a subservient property. So I wasn't criticising it from a street scene perspective.
Okay.
So I didn't want that to be put in as a reason for refusal, because actually, design-wise, it sits within that locality, but it's because it's got that subservient property. Thank you.
Councillor Salmon.
So I think this is a well-written report, and actually it sets out, if we need to go down to that granular level of detail, exactly why we think it conflicts with PP 27. Is it C and D? I can't remember off the top of my head, but whichever of the two sub-clauses it is. So point 35 in the report, in regard to number 5A, Chaddersley Wood, for proposed separation and increased height, bulk and massing would significantly alter the relationship between the two properties and introduce a more imposing three-storey form in close proximity to this neighbouring property. This would result in a greater sense of enclosure and perceptibility and a perceptibly more dominant outlook compared to the existing chalet-style bungalow. So that clearly is a conflict, you know. So I think if we have to go down to that granular level detail, that would be what I would focus in on. Similarly, I think we also have, but I just want to check, this seems like a more granular level of detail I would expect to be putting into a refusal. I would expect to be saying, we are refusing on this part of the neighbourhood plan under these grounds. I wouldn't. Do you need me to go into that level of detail for every bit of this proposal to refuse?
So when we're drafting up reasons for refusal at committee, we need to be clear what procedurally we need to, it's not just the policy, it's the reasons as well. The officers will come back in agreement with the chair, vice chair and head of planning operations, the actual wording, but it's really important for officers to accurately obtain the understanding of the material planning reasons to why it's being refused, and that's why I'm asking these questions.
Councillor Salmon.
So I think if you want more then, so that section from paragraph 35, from 39 in relation to number 3A Chaddersley Wood Road and number 5A Chaddersley Wood Road, and to some extent numbers 26 Shore Road and 3 Chaddersley Wood Road, the proposal would result in some additional early morning shading due to the increased height and altered roof form. I would include that. And then I think as well as in point 40, in regard to numbers Seashore, oh dear, I cannot get my words out, but I think you can see in point 40, I'm not going to give it verbatim, we've all got the report in front. There are further conflicts with PP 27, I think C and D. Now I think that is it from me. I might be wrong. Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head all of the things in the report, but there seemed to me when I read this report initially, there was enough to say, no, there is a conflict here, and this could potentially outweigh the benefits. Having seen what it looks like and heard the representation, I'm convinced that it does. Yeah, and I'd be happy for us to delegate powers to chair, head of planning services or whatever to come up with more specific wording. But I think we've got enough there to refuse, and I would like to refuse this.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon. So, Ms Hamilton, can you go over, I know we've been supplying them, but in a more structured, ordered form, what will go in the, if we vote for refusal, what will go in the decision notice?
Okay, so be 2 reasons for refusal. The first is regard to the impact of the proposal due to the relationship between 5 and 5A and surrounding dwellings because of its height, bulk and massing, and its tandem arrangement would result in harm. I'm not doing precise wording.
Through you, Chair, I need some precise wording, summary wording for the minutes for what you're going to vote on. I appreciate that the decision notice reasons will be fleshed out and delegated.
Okay, slow down. The proposed separation and increased height, bulk and massing would result in a relationship that would be resulting in a harmful tandem arrangement that would appear overbearing and cramped, resulting in adverse harm to character. Okay. Reason refusal 2. Would be the proposal, due to its increase in height, bulk, scale, and its relationship to the surrounding residential properties, notably 5A, 3A, 3A, 7 and 26.
And Seashore.
And Seashore, thank you.
But
would result in an arrangement that would result in harm to residential amenity by way of overbearing impacts, and a loss of light. I think that's it. Have I missed any members, Chair?
Right, the proposer and seconder, do you think that's covered everything we want to include? Thank you, councillor Salmon and councillor
Beg your
Chavada.
pardon, through you again, Chair. Can I just clarify that the policy, is it PP27?
Sorry.
Lovely, thank you.
So, we've got a motion, seconded, motion to refuse, contrary to officer recommendation. If you want to refuse this application, vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. That's the end of the planning applications. We have no appeals report today because of the cycle. There's nothing new from last time. And also the bite-sized training we were due to have. Unfortunately, the presenting officer is unwell and unable to present. So this is the end of the meeting. Thank you, everybody.